What are we seeking? What are we ultimately looking for? If you look at all the great spiritual and religious traditions, from Christianity to Buddhism, Sufism, and all the mystical traditions, at the essence of their teachings is this singular message that can be generally summed up as, I am what I am ultimately seeking, or you are what you're ultimately seeking. So in a sense, we're ultimately seeking ourselves. That's the core message at the essence of these traditions. And initially, this understanding can come across as vague or confusing, even paradoxical. So I wanted to spend a bit of time exploring it, to unpack it a bit. What wisdom is behind those words? I am what I am ultimately seeking. And this question has been a big one for me personally. And maybe to provide some context, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was running a personal development program that was very successful, very effective. But people kept getting stuck in this initial phase where they were grappling with what it was they wanted to achieve, what were their goals, what were their aspirations. And typically people would come up with things that were kind of culturally normative or relatively vague. And as I helped them investigate further and further, there was a kind of convergence on these kind of core inner places, right? Some would call it happiness, others would call it peace, some would call it freedom. And then we would investigate what was actually behind those words. What does freedom actually mean? What is it to live a peaceful life? And as we investigated this, a lot of people would just kind of lose the path in front of them as we started investigating what was behind these concepts. And it was a difficult and challenging time for myself as well, because I started investigating these too, right? I thought what I ultimately wanted was freedom and peace and joy and happiness. And as I investigated that further, I saw that these were just empty concepts, that they had no substance behind them. What was it that I was actually looking for? And so it took me a long time and a few existential crises to really get to the bottom of this inquiry. And the thing that did the most work for me was this approach of realizing that the best way to get towards that which we're ultimately seeking is more through a process of negation than construction. And what I mean by that is by moving away what it is you're not looking for, what we're looking for becomes clearer. So when we apply that process to something like peace, if we remove all that is not peace, peace becomes more obvious, more evident, more real, more substantial. Understanding that what freedom really was or is the absence of limitation, and that what happiness really is the absence of any sense of lack, of any sense of missing anything, right? That's absence, and then happiness is presence. That love is the absence of separation, that peace is the absence of conflict. And through this process of negation, it becomes clearer what it is we're actually looking for, or what it is I was actually looking for. Once that becomes more vivid and more obvious and more evident, then this term becomes more clear. I am what I'm ultimately seeking. Because if I then turn my attention inward and try and understand this I, what am I truly? What is my essence? Beyond the form, beyond the body, beyond the mind, what is here in every moment? What stays with me? What is not disturbed or disrupted by the movements of life, that I carry as an essence in whatever situation or context I find myself in, because surely that's what I essentially am. And in investigating that through meditation, through contemplation, it becomes clear that the nature of that essence is one where there is no limitation, nothing lacking, no conflict, no separation. And in that sense, it becomes clear how this inward inquiry, turning our attention to ourselves to really understand our nature and coming into more and more contact with the truth of that essence, is exactly the direction in which our seeking is going, which is towards peace, the absence of conflict, happiness, the absence of lack, freedom, the absence of limitation, love, the absence of separation. So this turning of attention inward towards understanding our nature and resting as ourselves is exactly what we're seeking. I am what I am ultimately seeking.